All right, gang. Welcome back in. Here with Amy,
Hello.
and we are going to chat today about what do you do when you're in a rut. Um,
I think I kind of vacillate between being in a rut and being in a deeper rut. So I think this is a really exciting topic.
so I want to start with a story. Um,
What?
so
It's
shocking.
unusual.
so I think I've said on here before, but like my schedule for work is uh atypical of my peers.
Mhm.
I have one day a week when I have the twins home with me, another day a week where I have a babysitter for half of the day, basically pick up everybody by 3 o'clock or 3:30 every day,
Mhm.
a few days a week where I'm dropping everybody off. So on a good week, I have something like 26, 28 hours of work, um, like on a flawlessly executed week.
Mhm.
And as you can probably imagine, those are few and far between. like
Mhm.
there are not a lot of weeks without interruption.
Mhm.
And so Monday of this week, we brought Levi to Dartmouth Hitchcock Hospital. If you're not familiar with the area, it's a couple hours away from where we are. It was a pretty simple procedure. It was a kind of a preventative thing, something that he had going on since birth, and we were just like, we're just going to take care of this. But we had to go to
Mhm.
Dartmouth Hitchcock for it. So that was Monday, and Monday is typically one of my 2 days where I'm not at the gym and I don't really have any client calls. It's just a day to like get a lot of things done.
Mhm.
Is typically what happens on Monday. It's when I do a lot of writing. It's when I do a lot of like just back end stuff and um, so I didn't have Monday to do that. The week prior, uh, I think we had somebody was sick. The week prior, a babysitter was sick. The week prior, somebody, there was a day off. Next week is going to be school vacation week, and so my wife is going to be home, and the schedule goes off the rails.
Mhm.
So I mean, we're going to go on, I don't know, a 5 week stretch of not having a quote unquote normal week of work. And it's actually something where if I were to look at since September, when the school year started and this schedule started, the number of weeks that have been as written on paper, I could probably count on my two hands. And we record
Right.
this in the middle of April. Like, it's probably been somewhere in the 7 to 9, 10 range of
Mhm.
weeks that have gone according to plan. And they haven't been in a row. Like it's almost impossible to get like multiple weeks in a row. And so why do I share this? So and we've talked about this before, a lot of my experience that I can personally currently relate to a lot of clients and people on the fitness journey is with my business.
Mhm.
Because there are a lot of similarities to it, but I got the mechanics of what I need to do, and it's consistency and it's patience and all of these things, right? There's a lot of crossover, and we've talked a lot about that on the podcast before. But when we talk about creating momentum and whether or not we're in a rut or not, for me, the struggles are fairly similar to, I think, somebody on their fitness journey.
Mhm.
Um, and while I might get into ruts with my training, like right now, it's been a little bit wonky with training. I'm not worried that I'm not going to train well or my nutrition might be off, but I'm not worried I'm not going to get back to my nutrition because I've done that
Mhm.
for long enough that that's just part of who I am.
Mhm.
And I know I'm going to eventually do that. It's still not totally off the board that I have a really long stretch on the business side of things where I don't do great with what I need to do. Um, Now, when I'm talking about the fitness side of things, I said something important there that I'll come back to, which is it's part of who I am now. But when we talk about the business side of things, and for me, the rhythm and the routine piece of it, it's if we have a plan that is so airtight that we need everything to go perfectly in order for us to stick with it, we're going to fail.
100%.
If I needed 28 hours in a week to do what I needed to do for my business, just to keep it afloat, my business would have failed already. I have had to build my business with enough margin for the inevitable hiccups that come. And when I've had the hardest time sticking with the things that I need to do in my business, it's been the times where I didn't feel like I had enough margin. And so anything that came up was a wicked high stressor for me because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to make this up in my day. This is like, to go back to a fitness situation, when I first, for a long time in college and after college, my method for getting in shape and then getting out of shape was I would do some sort of Beachbody program, right? I do Insanity.
I think we all did that.
I do P90X. I do whatever, right?
I'm of the Billy Blanks generation. We did a lot of Tybo.
Tybo.
A lot of Tybo was happening in my college years.
There you go.
Followed immediately by a Hot Pocket. Because balance.
Hot Pockets are just molten lava.
Oh, they're not good. But when you're in college and you're not I went to college in Boston and it was an old dorm. Yeah, there were no kitchens. We couldn't do anything. So we had our crappy brown microwave.
Bagel bites.
Oh, and DiGiorno. The little ones that were microwavable.
Personal pizzas.
I used to have a toaster oven, and
Elio's pizza.
Strictly forbidden to have toaster ovens because our building was so old that they were afraid it was going to burn down. And we had the fire alarms would go off like monthly just because of faulty wiring, which is, feels good. But my RA knew that I had a toaster oven, and the only reason she let me keep it is because I would let her cook her pizza in my toaster oven.
There you go.
I worked the system.
Fire. My routine post-college, I don't know if I've ever said this in here, my routine post-college when I wasn't on one of my I'm going to lose weight kicks was I alternated my dinner every night between Elio's pizza.
Ooh.
Have you ever, so I would have either 2 Elio's pizzas.
Goodness.
Or, oh geez, I didn't realize. I would have 2 Elio's pizzas, or I would have Tyson buffalo chicken tenders and Market Basket seasoned French fries. That was my every other night routine.
I mean, delicious.
But you understand why. That was
your arteries must have been like,
that was normal. That was normal. And then I would go from that to like kale and boiled chicken.
Yeah. No wonder you're dropping weight so fast in college. Yeah. Your body's like, oh God, I don't know what to do.
This is why I figured out a different strategy, because that sucked.
Yeah.
So
I'm in the minority. I actually really like kale. I really like it.
You really are.
But I know I'm in the minority.
Megan went out to dinner last night with her brother, and she texted me, and she's like, which one sounds better, this or this? And one of them was like a kale and Brussels sprout salad.
Oh,
and she was like,
that.
Which one? And I was like, kale tastes like the ground. And she said, okay, well, that settles in.
I'm all about kale and Brussels. I make a kale and Brussels sprout salad that is delicious.
Yeah, no, it's not.
You have to massage lemon juice into your kale. That's the secret.
Jeez, this just sounds so wrong.
It looks wrong when you're doing it.
That's the equivalent of a cat person saying, "I really like my cat because they're like a dog." It's like if your only good thing you can say about your cat is that it's like a dog, then you're not a cat person. You're a dog person who just happens to have a cat. Like if you can, if
Oh.
like it tastes really good if
you do X,
if
Y,
I
Z,
cover
and then
it
pour
in
olive oil
cheese.
on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you completely mask it, it's
Yeah,
delicious.
it's delicious. If it no longer resembles kale,
Yeah,
then it tastes
that's
good.
the way to do it.
Oh my gosh.
No, I do like it. I know I'm weird. I know that, but I do enjoy it. Wow, I got you super off topic.
Yeah, you
Tybo P90X.
We used to do
Go.
So I used to do P90X, and the programs are 6 days.
Yeah.
For like 60 to 90 minutes, 70 to 90 minutes. Even Insanity was 35 to 55 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
And if you miss a day, then you're screwed basically, because it's like, all right, I missed it, I'm going to try to make it up on Sunday, and you can't make it up on Sunday, and so then you're trying to double up one day, and then you're behind, and you're like, screw it, I might as well start over.
Mm-hmm.
Or not start over because
up.
I ruined it,
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why those types of things fail is because there's no margin for error.
Mm-hmm.
There's no opportunity for life to happen and for things not to get blown up.
Mm-hmm.
This is the physical equivalent of living paycheck to paycheck, right? If you live paycheck to paycheck and then your transmission goes on your car and you don't have any margin, then it's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's a much bigger deal than if you have a little bit of margin. Then you can be like, okay, we can nip it, we can make some things happen and not be totally buried by this.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about getting into a rut, part of getting into or getting out of a rut is not getting into it in the first place, which means like preventative measures. And then there's what do you do to get out of it? So I want to start in the preventative measures piece of it, which is having a plan that is reasonable for what you should do. So let's just take exercise as a for instance. If you're not currently working out, do not start a 5-day-a-week plan.
Mm-hmm.
It's unreasonable for you to expect yourself to do that. That would be like taking somebody out of the mailroom and putting them into a board meeting. You might get lucky that they're a savant, but more than likely they're going to get buried.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't mean that they can never get there. It doesn't mean that you can't ever get to 5 days, but like start where you're at, start where something's reasonable. And if you're having a hard time sticking with a plan, look at the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Is the plan too extreme? Is it reasonable for me at this time? So I'll give another example on the nutrition side of things. I had a client who I was having this conversation with who was having a hard time. She was figuring out her nutrition, and she was having a hard time with like what her lunches and dinners were, because she would like forget to eat breakfast, and then she'd be really hungry at lunch, and then it would kind of spiral in that direction. And it was because like she was telling me the story on this day where she was planning, she had a meeting at 8 and she packed her breakfast and she was gonna have it at 9 at the end of the meeting. But the person who was supposed to show up for the meeting, it was with a couple of people, but it was like for this specific person, was late by almost an hour. And so they just sat there. And so then she didn't end up eating the breakfast that she packed until it was like 10:30, 11 o'clock. So then she didn't have lunch because she wasn't hungry for lunch. So then she got really snacky, and then dinner got thrown off, right? And this was the concept of, and so we were talking about, all right, what are we going to do nutritionally? And she said, I want to have 3 really, healthy meals a day. And I said, hang on, how many times a day are you currently eating? Because today you only ate twice. And she's like, I probably only eat twice a day. I was like, would you like to eat 3 times a day? She said, yeah. And I was like, so that's your goal. Eat 3 times a day. I don't care what it is. It doesn't mean that you're not eventually going to go into what is making up the meals. But like, let's let's make intentionally eating 3 times a day your next task, because you're not doing it. And reaching from where you are to 3 high quality meals a day is a big leap. It doesn't mean you can't do it, but like, let's get a win.
Right. It feels very overwhelming when you're trying to go from 0 to 60.
Well, and there's no margin there.
Mm-hmm.
If my goal is to have 3 healthy home cooked meals every day and I'm barely having 2, and some of those are not high quality meals, like, what happens if I miss one meal because, or like, we're late or whatever and we got to do takeout, or the whole week's a bust? It's like, just eat 3. I don't care what it is. You could have a Pop-Tart for breakfast as long as it's on purpose. And then we could figure out how do we set you up for success. But like, let's just make eating a priority, because then you're going to be less starving and less likely to reach for the Pop-Tarts in the middle of the day.
You're so wise.
I have my moments. So the idea, though, is we need to set ourselves up for success, because motivation is a momentum game. And if we feel like we're failing, we will continue to fail in that way.
Yeah, it's just human nature.
Because this is the key piece of it. And I've been kicking this around for a little bit. I forget how I phrased this. I want to say this well. If you aren't celebrating your wins with the same energy that you're regretting your failures, then you will stay stuck forever.
Say it one more time.
If you are not celebrating your wins with the same energy that you're regretting your failures, then you will stay stuck.
I like that.
If you plan for 2 workouts a week or 3 workouts a week and you do 2 of them, and your attention goes to the one that you did, then the week's gonna feel the one that you didn't do. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Then the week's gonna feel like a failure, even though you did 2 out of the 3, even though you succeeded more than you failed. So, step 1 is setting yourself up with a plan that's reasonable. Step 2 is celebrating the things that you are doing. It doesn't mean that you can't learn from the ways that you fall short, right? And be like, all right, why did that happen? But also, if you're asking yourself, why did I miss this workout? And you're not asking yourself, why did I make these workouts? Then you're missing it.
Really have to diagnose the whole picture.
Like, if I don't know what worked, then how can I replicate it? Like, the best question that I could ask somebody is like, hey, I nailed my step count this week. Crushed it. I'm like, hey, awesome. That's fantastic. What worked well for you this week? Well, I went for a 10-minute walk right after I had lunch every day, and I went for a 10-minute walk right after I had dinner every day. And then I just was the rest of it was the way that I moved the rest of the day. Okay, that's something we can replicate. But if you're like, my steps were great 6 of the 7 days, or 5 of the 7 days, but 2 of the days I didn't do anything. And you only focus on, well, those 2 days, like, this kid was sick and that was sick, and and it was raining out and all of these things, then you're going to feel like everything has to be perfect. Versus you look at, all right, what did I do well, and how can I replicate that, and how can I adapt that for when life happens? So let's just take for instance, I drove 2 hours with my wife and my son to Dartmouth. What do you think that kid wants to do? My 4-year-old son, the second we get into the hospital.
Run around.
Run.
Yeah, that's a great hospital to run around into. Tons of space.
Yeah, tons of space. And so we got there. We had probably 40 minutes before they were going to call us back. So I put them down and I just followed them around the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go in, we do it, and then we sit down. And then Megan and I went and we walked halfway around the hospital to find a place to sit and do a little bit of work. And then we walked halfway around back because we knew we were going to be sitting for the vast majority of the day. And so on a day where I sat in a car for 4 hours and in a hospital waiting room for 2.5 hours, I ended up with 8,000 steps. Was that I nailed it day? No. But could that day have been a 3,000 step day?
Easily. And probably would have been for most other people.
100%. So that's the piece of it, which is the last piece, or not the last piece, but the next kind of piece of it is when you're in a rut, the question is, ask yourself, what can I do? What's one thing I have been doing well, and how can I do more of that? So again, I'll go back to my business, for instance, and I'll be frank with the audience. Okay. The last month,
I'll be Amy.
That was so bad. That was awful.
Made you smile.
That was such a dad joke.
I live with a dad, and he's rubbed off on
I
me.
am a dad, and I didn't even think of that. I'll be honest with the audience.
That's better.
The last month for my business has not been great from a revenue perspective. I haven't gotten any new clients, and I've had a few people, which is a good thing, graduate and not necessarily renew with me, which is fine. I'm excited for them, but there's certain things where you're like, hey, I'm expecting things to happen and they don't happen a certain way, right? Like I had that video that went really, really viral about Megan and the OB appointment, the BMI and all of that. So I got a bunch of new followers from that, which was great. But the timing of it, I put out a post saying I have room for more clients. Like the day after, like on Monday, after Friday through Sunday, I gained somewhere like 120 new followers. So who sees your posts first are your new followers, not necessarily the ones that post was probably meant for people who've been around for a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, and so it was just poor timing where I didn't get as many inquiries from that as I might have, right? And there's just some moving parts. All of this is stuff where you'd be like, that's just unfortunate circumstances, right? It feels outside of my whatever. And also it's like the results aren't necessarily what I would like them to be because I'm not seeing that. And quite frankly, Monday was tax day. And that's when we submitted our taxes. Nothing like waiting to 8:45 on the day it's due. But part of that was for our businesses, we have to. It's not nearly as fun as it used to be. We don't get returns.
It's not fun. Yeah.
We have to write a big check to the government, and we had allocated a good amount of that, or almost all of that. We had allocated, and we had it set aside. But it was again the margin in the bank account wasn't what I hoped it would be when we were going to cut a very large check to the United States government. And so I was like, hey, I'm kind of hoping that we, get what I expected to have a little bit more of a buffer there, right? It gets a little uncomfortable when we don't have that margin. And so I was feeling a little bit discouraged about the state of the business because I could look at it and I could say, this thing hasn't been going well. These couple of things have not been going well. However, that doesn't help me get out of that rut, right? This is like when you look at the guardrail when you're driving, where do you end up? You end up on the guardrail. You go to what you focus on. And so if I'm focusing on the failures, then I'm just going to steer into those things. So I had a call and I had a moment where I sat down and I was like, what's been going well in the business?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I've graduated 5 clients in the last 8 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
which is like actually a really cool thing for me. It's a very odd thing, and I've talked about it on the podcast before, but it's a weird thing as a coach, but it's very similar to being a parent where like your goal is to kind of make yourself not needed anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have people who I'm like, no, this isn't just you're not renewing because you don't have the money or you're not seeing. It's like, no, you're graduating because you feel good to
Mm-hmm.
go off on your own. And I'm getting I got a lot of really great wins from clients recently, like shooting me messages about awesome things that they're experiencing. And it was a moment for me where I said, you know what? Even though I'm not necessarily getting more clients or more revenue, I'm doing a really good job coaching the clients that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really proud of that because that is always going to be the biggest thing for my business is, am I a good coach? Am I doing a good job coaching? And I felt really confident about that. I was like, I'm doing a really good job coaching. And so I have no qualms with, there are things that are going really well in the business. So let me double down on those things. Like, let me focus more of my energy on the clients that I currently have.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll keep doing the things that I'm going to do, but like, let me focus on the things that are going well. And as a result of that, I had some renewal calls recently, and I have people who are going to continue to work with me. And so that's new revenue and things, but that comes as a result of building the relationships and steering into helping my clients.
Mm-hmm.
And things have come as a result of that. And so when we're in a rut, we oftentimes are focused on the things that we're not doing. And
Totally.
we just try to keep doing those things or try to not do those things rather.
And like white knuckle it to try to.
Yeah. Like yeah. I just gotta get myself I just gotta get my act together.
Mm-hmm.
I literally just was messaging with somebody the other day, and she was telling me that she was having a really hard time with chocolate. She was just like, I eat a ton of chocolate. Mm-hmm. And it's really frustrating her, like in terms of where that has led her to her body composition, how she feels, and all of these things.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you know, if you're up for it, I'm happy to hop on a call and just kind of chat it through with you. She's like, no, I'm good. I just need to get my act together. And I was like, well, that's fine. Like the offer's there, but sometimes it helps to have another perspective on it. Mm-hmm. And she's like, no, I'm good. I just need to, you know, discipline myself. And that's fine, right? That absolutely could be the case. And everybody's allowed to make their own decision. However, and I said this to another coach the other day, and I want to hear what you think about this.
Sure.
Discipline is overrated.
I think I would need context.
Yeah, in this sense.
Like, oh, I don't know.
In this sense, how we traditionally think of discipline. How we traditionally think of discipline is, I'm eating too much chocolate. I just need to be disciplined and not eat the chocolate.
Yeah, because it kind of like an all or nothing connotation.
Well, and it's also just like, it's a willpower issue. Like I need, it's like, did you ever watch Dodgeball?
Yeah. Yes.
I know you do.
Patches O'Houlihan is my hero.
But
was it duck, dip, dive, something?
Dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge.
Why is dodge in there twice? Because it's that important. Yes, I've seen it a couple of times.
What's Ben Stiller's character's name? I can't think of it.
Globo Jim, but
yeah, Globo's.
Marty?
No, I don't remember what it is. We'll look it up. So, but Ben Stiller's character, if you've ever seen this, right? You know what he's got? He's got the shock therapy with the donut, right? You know what I mean?
Oh,
like
I love that scene.
and he's like, you want it, don't you? And he's like, that's what we think of as discipline, as willpower.
Yeah.
That like we have to be faced with it and just have to overcome. Like it's me against me. Like I have to just will myself to do this. And that just is not a sustainable thing.
But that is how all of us think about it, and I don't know where that came from, but all of us do. Like, oh, I have 0 willpower because I had an M&M today. It's like,
so where it comes
White
from
Goodman,
is
by the way.
White Goodman. There we go.
Yeah.
It comes with the messaging. This is like the kids who walk into my classroom and they're like, I'm bad at math.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They've heard it, and so then therefore they assume that's what it is. Right? And so we assume I had an M&M, I have no willpower. Last night I was at the grocery store and I grabbed at the checkout line a Snickers bar and I ate it in the car. Right? There's not a willpower issue. And you could be like, Jeff, seriously? And I was like, yeah, absolutely.
I think that's surprising to me because like I'm a candy person and I don't even eat a whole size because I can't. Like it's like too much, too sweet.
Well, I have no qualms with that. But the thing about it was that was a willpower issue where I went to the grocery store hungry.
Yeah, that's
I went to the grocery store hungry.
Yeah.
And I knew that I was coming home
mm-hmm.
and Megan was going to come to the gym. And so it was going to be me on the 3 kids. And I was going to try to, like, I was like, dinner's not going to get ready for 2 hours, 3 hours. And I was like, I don't really have a lot else. I mean, I have stuff in the house to eat, right? But like in my head, I'm like, I'm not going to have dinner. I might as well just do something. You know what I mean? Like, that's a willpower. That right there is where discipline is overrated and we need to shift it. Discipline is actually underrated in another sense, which is setting yourself up for success, right? I opened another podcast episode with this, is like fish don't swim out of water.
That's true.
Like you put them in the proper environment and then they're able to do what they're meant to do. If we're set up for success, this comes back to the proper plan, but also we're set up for success with some preparation and all of this kind of stuff. Then all we have to do is execute on the thing. So if I had not had to go to the grocery store hungry because I planned it better, this is so annoying. And 2, if I had like recognized that Megan's going to be at the gym and I should probably have started dinner earlier, have something else that's a little bit more reasonable, so I'm not trying to cook it while I have all 3 kids, those would have set me up better for success. So when we think about willpower, we think about white knuckle our way through it. I just got to get my act together and just do it. The problem with that is we're not set up for success. And so we're trying to white knuckle our way through something that we're just not prepared to do.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of destined to fail. Because the other part of it is we're focusing on, usually when we're trying to white knuckle our things, that's a focus. That's the looking at the guardrail. Like if I have a trouble with donuts and I'm sitting there and I just stare at a donut and I just try not to eat it, it's going to be really difficult. Even if I don't eat it in that moment, I'm going to be thinking about it and I'm going to come back to it later. Like I'm willing to bet, and I apologize for this, but I'm willing to bet that there's somebody who's listening to this podcast who's going to either get a Snickers bar or B, a donut as a result of this podcast because I said it so many times.
I have a hard time watching any of my favorite British baking shows if I'm hungry because all I want to do is go and bake a cake.
Yep.
And eat the entire thing.
We're focused on the thing, right? We're focused on the thing that we're not doing. And so we need to focus on the things that we are currently doing, double down on those things, feel good about those things, and then think about what is one reasonable action that I can take that feels achievable. So I've said, this is coming back to the business example here, because I'm like, this was last week, and I texted Megan. And I was like, I'm in a little bit of a rut. I'm just letting you know like I'm not all here right now.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you like, just so you know, like I'm not at like full capacity in order to give to you.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you're needing something of me, know that I don't have 100%. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to have anything to give, but I'm not at 100% here,
Yeah.
and I can't carry all the load here. If
Mm-hmm.
you know, because I knew she was having a little bit of a rough week too. So I was like, hey, I know you're having a rough week, but I can't. You know, we go through this in marriage. I think
Mm-hmm.
everybody does. Is like, hey, somebody's kind of carrying a little bit more of the load. Like it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of the nature of it. It's like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a hard time. I need you to kind of carry the load of the household, certainly, but like my emotional
The emotional, yeah.
load here, and walk with me through this. And so I was just letting her know. I was like, I don't have quite as much to
Mm-hmm.
give. And she's like, well, what do you need? And I was like, I'm having a hard time because I can't string together weeks of work here. And it's
Mm-hmm.
feeling like I can do a couple of these, but it's feeling overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when we had the conversation. She's like, what do you think you need? And I was like, well, what do you need to do is what she asked. And it was an opportunity for me to reflect on what are the things that actually move the needle,
Mm-hmm.
because it can feel very daunting
Mm-hmm.
to be like, oh, I have a gajillion things to do. Fitness can
Yeah.
feel very daunting. I got to walk, I got to
Yeah.
eat, I got to exercise, I got to do all these things, right? It can feel very daunting. And it's like, all right, what do I need to do? What do I actually have to do
Mm-hmm.
in order? Like, what are the bare minimums? Like, what are the things that are going to move the business forward? What are the things that are going to move my fitness forward? And what's one of those things that I can reasonably attack
Mm-hmm.
and have a chance at accomplishing? And it was from that conversation that I started to think about, like, oh, okay, I'm going to send a message to a couple of the people that I had talked to. You know, I'm going to do these things for my clients. I'm going to do these things, right? Those are the things that I am going to do. But as a
Mm-hmm.
result of her asking, like, what do you need to do? And I was like, okay, I don't know if I need to right now, whatever, X for the website or
Mm-hmm.
build this system or do
Mm-hmm.
this, right? Those are nice to do's, but they're not
Right.
have to do's.
Mm-hmm.
But it came as a result of when again, coming back to the plan of like, all right, the plan is too precise that we don't have any margin for error. I was talking to a guy who just signed up with me this morning, to start working together, who I've known for a while. He's a pilot. And he was talking about how this summer he's going to like a training program for 3 months,
Mm-hmm.
which is a great opportunity for him. But he's like, this is going to be nuts. This is going to be so busy. And the conversation that we had was like, listen, he called his life, it's consistently inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
Like, think about a pilot life, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, he's flying all over the place, he's staying in hotels, he's home for a week, he's on the road, he's, you know what I mean? Like, it's consistently inconsistent. And so if he has a plan that only works when he's home and has access to the gym and has the schedule,
Mm-hmm.
he's going to be shot in the foot.
Yeah.
And it can feel like, oh man, I can't seem to string these things together. Well, listen, the abnormal has become your normal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for me, my weekly schedule on paper is not the normal schedule, because it's happened like 9 times out of 25.
Mm-hmm.
More often than not, I have an abnormal schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to have a plan that works in the abnormal, because that's actually the normal. So this is where it comes back to the final kind of piece of the puzzle. All right, bringing this all together, which is what are, and we touched on, what are the minimum effective doses of what it is that you need to do,
Mm-hmm.
and how can I set myself up for success in terms of that's where I'm disciplined, where all I have to do is basically show up.
Mm-hmm.
And those things are going to get done. Like, those things are going to get done no matter what gets thrown at me because I've been set up for it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like, for instance, when you think about, I'm going to have protein with each of my meals. That could be
Mm-hmm.
a minimum effective dose.
Yep.
Okay. What do I need to do from a discipline and setup perspective so that I have protein in all of my meals? That might mean, one, I got to go to the grocery store.
Right. Have protein available.
Have protein available. Maybe I spend, half an hour on a weekend day batch cooking
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of chicken and ground beef or something like that and just
Mm-hmm.
put it in Tupperware in the fridge that I could just pull from.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that that's the plan for every single meal, but at least I have it done, right? If I had, so we ran out of chicken. If I had chicken made, I could have just thrown on some pasta
Mm-hmm.
and made a salad and had a full meal in about 45 seconds, in about 8
Right.
minutes
Right.
without any effort. And I can do that while I'm keeping my boys from killing each other.
Mm-hmm.
If I
It's a
had the chicken
total
done.
game changer. It's a
But
total game changer to have that done.
you know what I mean? Like, if I have a plan when I go to the gym, if I have time blocked in my calendar to go to the gym, if I have an alarm on my phone to get me to go to bed,
Mm-hmm.
these are simple things that's just like, hey, if I do these few things,
Mm-hmm.
all I have to do is then show up.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're blocked off from 8 a.m. or probably 7:30, 7:40 until 9:20 every
Mm-hmm.
Thursday morning to come work out.
Yep.
It's not on your calendar. There are abnormal situations where you're like, oh, I might have to leave or whatever it is, but that's blocked off. So
Mm-hmm.
all I got to do is I got to show up. Jeff's going to tell me what to do. I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to leave.
Yeah. I
There,
found a part of my plan that is necessary for me is I have to tell someone whatever that thing is, so that it's either someone who I live like John, I have to tell him so that he's the one who's reminding me, or I tell someone who is at the gym waiting for me so that I have that person who's holding me accountable. And it's not like, the end of the world if I can't make a workout, but at least it's that one extra part of my plan that makes it, for me, harder to skip.
You want it to be low barrier to entry to succeed and high barrier to fail.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning it has to be almost hard for you not to do it. So that's an example of it. There's an extra thing that you have to do in order to not go.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, laying out your clothes the night before lowers the barrier to entry.
Yep.
Because you're not like, oh, I don't know what clothes I'm going to wear. It's like or sleeping them the night before. It's like, I'm literally wearing my clothes. And when I step out of my bed, I step into my shoes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, this is almost inconvenient for me not to do this. Like, I have to take off my gym clothes to not go to the gym. So this is setting yourself up for success. So then all I have to do is just do the thing within it. Steer into the things that you are doing. And then finally, this is what I said at the very beginning, and I said I was going to come back to, which is, I'm not worried about getting back to my, if I get off rails with my nutrition or get back to my exercise routine. Because quite frankly, my exercise routine lately has been mediocre at best. Mediocre at best. But I'm not worried that I'm not going to exercise. Because that's part of my identity now. It's part of what I do. And that comes from years of doing it over and over and over again. And not letting and focusing on the wins and not the failures. Because I'll be honest with you, it has nothing to do with my business at this point. It just doesn't. Like, you know, everybody's like, "Oh, trainer, you be in shape." Like, like that's not incentive enough for me to exercise.
Mm-hmm.
I do it because it's what I do.
Mm-hmm. Just
I do it,
organically, it's replaced all of your old ways.
but that came from years of not letting ruts define what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And constantly trying to find ways to get a win rather than focusing on what I'm not doing. This is why when people go on vacations or they have a thing, I'm like, and they're like, I don't know, I think I want to work out. I'm like, it's not a bad idea to work out on vacation, not because you're going to get a great workout or because you got to earn whatever, but it's you showing I can find a way to make this work in any circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
And then highlighting the wins.
Mm-hmm. Celebrate them, no matter how small.
Because positive relationship to things kicks the crap out of negative relationship. Because you're like, if you're honest with yourself, like how far has that negative relationship with exercise gotten you?
Nowhere.
Yeah. How far has it gone feeling guilty for having the snack and doing the thing? Like, it just doesn't get you anywhere.
No.
And so if you, it's like your kids, right? Like if all my kids ever hear from me is the things that they're doing wrong, how does that relationship look?
Mm-hmm.
I heard this said about business, actually. A guy named Simon Sinek said this really interesting way, which was talking about like an underperformer in your business. And if you're constantly, if you have an underperformer in your business and then you're constantly like just correcting them,
Mm-hmm.
what are they going to think? They're going to think that they're an underperformer, and they're going to steer into who they think that they are. Versus if you were to praise them for things that they're doing well, then they are going to steer into those things more and more. Because what we bring attention to is where we go. And so if I am constantly like, how do I have the identity that this is who I am? It's because there's a positive affect, a positive relationship with it.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm focusing on the things that I'm doing well, and then I'm problem solving, not just like, oh, why did that fail? But what can we do differently?
Mm-hmm.
It's the posture of problem solving versus it's I'm standing next to you, I'm not standing in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Together, we're standing together, we're looking out at the problem and we're trying to figure out where we're going to go versus I'm standing in front of you, confronting you with the issue.
Yep.
So do that with yourself. Like when you're looking into the mirror, don't like, that's a confrontational position, right? People are like, oh, look in the mirror and say, you know what I mean? Like, that's fine. Like, you got to be honest with yourself, but like, be on your own side in this. Because you're your own best support system in this. Because nobody can do it for you. And beating yourself up doesn't do you any good. Those are my thoughts.
Pretty solid thoughts there, my friend.
I think this is our shortest one we've ever done.
It might be. Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm gonna pitch something here. And I've never done this on the pod, but I'm gonna do it. If you are in a rut or have a hard time with ruts and you have a hard time getting yourself out of it, this is what I do. This is what I do as a coach. So if you've been listening for a while, and you'd like somebody to kind of help you through that, send me a message. Would love to chat with you. But
he's pretty great.
Oh, thanks, Amy.
But just like have your tissues handy.
3 people cried on calls yesterday. I don't know what it is, man. I'm like, this is.
You have a way. You just like find the open, like not in like a mean way, but like you find that thing that they need to talk about.
Yeah.
It's just an emotion release. That's all it is. That's all. Yeah. That's all tears are for me, anyway. It's just an emotion that needs to get out, and that's the way it gets out.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't faze me. I mean, it in a good way. Like it's we're talking about real stuff, and we're gonna make real changes. So I appreciate y'all listening. Reach out with any questions, and we'll talk to you next time.